How does Paul Warne still have a job at Derby County? We've spoke over the last few weeks really about Paul Warne and how his position is under pressure, and ultimately realistically the truth is that Paul Warne is under pressure from the Derby County supporters. But there's one supporter who ultimately doesn't seem to put Paul Warne under pressure, and I've got big worries as to why that is, and I think it's a massive problem for Derby County that the owner, who is supposedly this big massive Derby County fan, ultimately doesn't see the wool through the trees of what is going on at Derby County. Ultimately, the signing of Paul Warne back in 2022, I believe it was ultimately a bad call of a long-term vision for Derby County. And sometimes as a owner, as a chairman, you have to admit when you've made a bad call, and you have to admit when changes need to happen. Now, ultimately, Paul Warne did what he was intended to do, and that was take us out of League One. But David Clowes gave him a 4-year contract. And ultimately, the rumours seem to be that David Clowes cannot afford to remove Paul Warne from that contract. Whether that is true or not, I don't know. I don't have a look at the books. As I've mentioned multiple times, I don't know what the financial situation of the club is, which ultimately is quite worrying, because we all thought we was perfectly fine under Mel Morris, and the administration was nowhere near when that report came out. But ultimately, we was closer than we ever thought, and this is the devastating part about the situation we find ourselves in right now, and it's that Derby County are in a position where nobody really knows anything about the situation. We're all told we're on this strict budget, and nobody really knows how strict this budget is. Nobody knows nothing about this budget, which ultimately, fair enough, not letting the competition know how much money you've got, but ultimately, no one knows anything. You look at transfers, and obviously the Matt Clark one, the rumour is that that's an £800,000 potential permanent transfer in the summer, but it's a loan until then, which ultimately, that'll be £1.6 million we've spent this January window, if that is the case. And that then leaves Derby County in a position where how much is it going to cost to get rid of Paul Warne? And I think many people would prefer Paul Warne gone than signings, because in my personal opinion, yes, we need extra players. I'll never turn around and say we don't need more players in the squad. But ultimately, Paul Warne, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why Derby County are struggling to perform the way they are. If we go through some of the numbers put together by FootMob of Derby County's season so far, we'll start off with an attacking standpoint, and you have to acknowledge that these numbers come because of Paul Warne's football. It's not because of the players on the pitch; it's because of what they are told to do as a team. And expected goals, we currently sit 21st. 30. That's our expected goals. Essentially bottom 3. Shots on target per match, 23rd, 3.5 per game. Big chances, 45. We sit 22nd in the league. Big chances missed, 17th. 31 chances are missed. So you put this together, we've created 45 big chances. We've missed 31. There's what? 14 chances, big chances that we've scored on according to FootMob. We then go on to accurate passes, 250.3 per game, 22nd in the league. Long balls per game, we are 9th. We are 9th in long balls per game, 23 per game. Accurate crosses, we're 5th, 5.2 per game. Touches in opposition box, 17th, 589. And then we go to corners, 161. We are 6th in the division for corners. Now, if we then go to the defensive standpoint, which ultimately in a lot of these we're in a fairly decent situation. XG conceded 12. We're 12th, which is 35.7. Fairly decent, really, in the grand scheme of things. We then go on to interceptions. We lead the way first with 10.3. But I don't want people to think that because we lead the way in interceptions, that's a good thing. It's not. It just means that we're out of possession a lot. You look at the teams that are down the bottom. A lot of them teams are high up on these interceptions, tackles, clearances and things like that because we don't have a lot of the ball. So you are going to have opportunities, better opportunities for more interceptions. And that is what Derby County do. And for me, it's a terrible way to play. Possession won in the final third. We're 8th with 3.8, which ultimately is fairly decent. Pompey are up the top of that list with 5.3. Penalties conceded, we've only conceded 1. Saves per match, 2.8. Now, Obviously, you can then go on to an overall standpoint. Goals per match, we're 15th with 1.1. Conceded per match, 1.4. 15th again. Average possession, 22nd. Clean sheets, 16th. And the thing for me about this is, the more you look at Paul Warne's football and the style of play, the more you realise how big of a problem we currently find ourselves in. Over the course of his spell at Rotherham United from November 2016 to September of 2022, he averaged 1.4 points per game on a 39% win percentage. Obviously, it's a lot more games than is managed at Derby County, but over the course of his time at Derby County, bear it in mind he spent 2 seasons in League One, essentially stat padding. Let's not chat shit, because we should have gone up the first season he came in. We should have at least got the playoffs that year. 1.6 points per game, 46%. Now, if we look at Derby County this season and look at how many points we have on the board, we all know we're currently sitting on 27 points across 29 games. That is a points per game of, I'll just do it on my calculator just to make sure it's correct. I don't want anyone to try and tell me that I'm giving an opinion. That's 0.93 points per game, which over the course of a 46 game season gets you 42 points on the board. Over the course of the last 20 games, I think we've picked up 15 points. That is 0.75 points per game. If you times that over a season, that's 34.5 points, which is less, I believe, than what we got in 2021-22 when we had administration. So at the moment, we're currently due to get less points than a team which was pure youth and freebies, which is an absolute joke. And we've got the news over the course of the last 24 hours that it looks as if Erin Cashin's going to be moving away. I spoke about it in a video yesterday, and for me, I don't blame Cashin for wanting to move. Who would want to turn down a move to Premier League Brighton and Hove Albion, a team which, if we go and look at the Premier League, we'll just go and take a look at the Premier League, at the league table. Where are Brighton sitting in the league right now? They're currently sitting 9th in the division. You can go and play with the likes of João Pedro, Matoma, Lamptey, players like that. You look at some of the players within their squad, and there's some really, really good players there. Ferdy, Kadioglu, a player who Derby County wanted back under Philip Cocu. So for me, who blames Cashin for wanting to leave, especially when we're playing this terrible brand of football that is ultimately only a negative for Derby County? Now, Cashin's 23 years old. His contract expires in 2027. Why are Derby County pursuing with a manager in Paul Warne who just doesn't know what he's doing at this level? And people always use the context of, but he was at Rotherham, they're a small club. But he's now treating us like we're Rotherham. Now, am I saying that we should be comfortable in this division? Ultimately, no. I don't think anybody has the right to say they should be comfortable in the division. But I still believe we should have 10, 15 more points than what we have on the board right now. And that comes down to a range of different factors, not just individual player mistakes or referee decisions. It also comes down to managerial decisions, in which I believe Paul Warne's made some bad decisions which have cost us points. And if you give us that 10 points, that puts us in mid-table. I firmly believe this squad is a mid-table squad. Anywhere from 17th to 10th, I think Derby County could be right now. And realistically, if we talk about 15 points, the upper end of what I believe Derby County should have on the board, that would put you just inside the playoffs. Now, ultimately, do I believe that Derby County are a playoff team? No. But do I believe we could be much higher up in the division? And the answer, quite frankly, is yes. And are we going to see changes over the course of the next few weeks? I don't know. Should we? Absolutely. Are we going to? It's all based on David Clowes. And sometimes I do wonder whether the club is in the best hands with David Clowes and Stephen Pearce, because ultimately the conversations we're having right now about Paul Warne are conversations that ultimately should be concerning the end of his job. But ultimately we're sat here with Paul Warne having no pressure on his shoulders from those upstairs, and the only pressure coming from those in the stands. And at some point you have to stand up and say, is this for the best of the club to stick with a long-term vision with a manager who has never been successful in the Championship? all that's going to happen is we'll get relegated down to League One. We'll end up in League One, maybe for a season, maybe for 2. Paul Warne will get us back up, and then we're going to have the same situation again and again and again. And ultimately, it isn't good enough for Derby County to be a yo-yo team in this division. And we need more. And David Clowes is the only person that can do that. You can have your say down in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'll catch you in the next one.